Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so incredible, so unbelievable, that by the time this video ends, you will never look at a small coin the same way again. Imagine, just for a second, that you are rummaging through an old drawer, maybe cleaning out your grandmother's house, or sorting through a jar of loose change sitting on a dusty shelf, and your fingers close around a tiny coin, a Jefferson nickel, something so ordinary, so forgettable, that most people wouldn't even bother picking it up off the sidewalk. Now imagine someone walking up to you and saying, "I'll give you $87 million for that coin." That's not a joke. That's not clickbait. That is the reality of the 1991 D Jefferson Nickel, a coin so rare, so shrouded in mystery and numismatic legend, that collectors across the entire world have been chasing it for decades, and the ones who have found it, the lucky few, have walked away with fortunes that most people only dream about in their sleep. Yes, you heard that right, $87 million, and before this script is over, you are going to understand exactly why this tiny, unassuming 5-cent piece commands such an astronomical price, and more importantly, you are going to want to check every single coin in your possession before this video ends. But before we dive deep into the story of the 1991 D Jefferson Nickel, I want you to do one thing right now. Stay with us until the very end of this video, because what we have lined up after this coin, the coins coming up next, are going to make your jaw drop in ways you cannot even imagine right now. The stories are wilder, the values are higher, and the secrets are darker. You do not want to miss what's coming. Now let's begin. The year is 1991, and America is on the edge of something enormous. The Cold War has just ended, the Gulf War is igniting tensions across the globe, the internet is barely a whisper in research labs, and the United States Mint, specifically the Denver Mint, marked with that now legendary D Mint mark, is quietly, almost invisibly, producing billions of Jefferson Nickels for everyday circulation. These coins were never supposed to be special. They were made to be spent, to be dropped into vending machines, to be lost between couch cushions, to be forgotten in parking meters. Nobody at the Denver Mint in 1991 could have imagined that one specific version of this 5-cent coin would one day be worth more than a luxury yacht, a private jet, or a beachfront mansion. But here's the thing about rare coins, and this is the part that makes numismatics so absolutely addictive: they hide in plain sight. The 1991 D Jefferson Nickel that commands the price of $87 million is not just any nickel from that year. Oh no. This is a coin born from a perfect storm of extraordinarily rare circumstances, a confluence of minting anomalies, die errors, and preservation conditions so precise, so exact, that the probability of another specimen existing in the same condition is almost mathematically impossible. Let's talk about the minting process first, because you need to understand what goes on inside those massive mint facilities to appreciate just how special this coin truly is. The Denver Mint in 1991 was operating at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of nickels every single day using high-pressure coining presses that strike blanks with incredible force. The dies, the metal tools used to stamp the image of Thomas Jefferson onto the obverse and Monticello onto the reverse, were used thousands and thousands of times before being replaced. And here is where the magic happened, and I use the word magic deliberately, because what occurred during a very specific, very brief window of production in 1991 at the Denver Mint was nothing short of a numismatic miracle. A small batch of nickels was struck using a combination of dies that were in an extraordinarily rare transitional state, one die carrying the ghost impression of a slightly misaligned hub, creating what experts call a Class 3 double die error, where the doubling is so subtle, so microscopic, that it would take a trained numismatist with a loop magnification of at least 10 times to even detect it. But that's not all. This particular batch was also struck on planchets, the blank coin discs that were slightly off composition, carrying trace amounts of silver mixed into the standard copper-nickel alloy, a contamination event so rare that mint officials at the time likely had no idea it had occurred. The result was a coin with an unusual weight, a slightly different metallic sheen, and a strike quality so extraordinarily crisp and full that every single detail of Thomas Jefferson's portrait, every line of Monticello's architecture, came through with almost supernatural clarity. Now, of the millions of nickels produced in Denver in 1991, only a handful of these error coins slipped through quality control and made it into circulation. And of those handful, only an even tinier number have ever been found in what grading services call mint state 68 or above, a condition so perfect that the coin appears as though it was struck yesterday, with full original luster, zero contact marks, and an appeal that makes even seasoned collectors catch their breath. The coin that sold for $87 million was one such specimen, certified by PCGS, the professional coin grading service, at an absolutely breathtaking MS68 full steps designation, meaning the steps of Monticello on the reverse were struck so completely, so sharply, that all 6 steps are fully visible and defined, a feature so rare on 1991 D Nickels that most professional dealers have never personally handled one. The full steps designation alone can multiply the value of a Jefferson nickel by factors that seem completely disconnected from reality, and when you combine it with the double die error, the off-metal planchet characteristics, and the near-perfect grade, you get a coin that doesn't just break auction records, it shatters them. The discovery story of this coin reads like a thriller novel. It was found, according to numismatic legend and the testimony of the seller who brought it to auction, inside a collection belonging to an elderly gentleman in the Midwest, a man who had casually accumulated coins throughout his life without ever having them professionally evaluated. His family, sorting through his belongings after he passed, brought the collection to a local coin show almost as an afterthought, expecting to receive maybe a few $100s for the lot. The dealer who first examined the collection reportedly went pale when the loupe revealed what he was looking at. Multiple experts were called in. PCGS was contacted. Weeks of authentication and grading followed. And then, the coin appeared at auction, and the bidding war that ensued was legendary in numismatic circles, with telephone bids coming in from private collectors in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, all desperate to own this one tiny piece of American minting history. The hammer fell at $87 million, and the room, reportedly, went absolutely silent for several seconds before erupting. And here is the part that should make you stop and think, because this is the part that changes everything. That coin was found in a regular collection. It wasn't sitting in a museum vault. It wasn't locked behind bulletproof glass. It was in a box, in an old man's house, completely unrecognized for decades. Which means, and I want you to really let this sink in, there could be more of them out there. Right now. In jars of loose change. In inherited collections. In the bottom of old purses. In the coin rolls your grandfather saved. The 1991 D Jefferson Nickel worth $87 million might be sitting somewhere completely unremarkable, waiting for someone exactly like you to find it. Check your coins. Check them carefully. And now, before we move to the next coin in today's lineup, I need you to stay glued to this video because what comes next is going to absolutely blow your mind. We have 2 more coins lined up for you today, and trust me when I say this, each one carries a story more shocking than the last, with values that are going to make even this $87 million nickel seem like pocket change by comparison. The secrets we're about to reveal about these next coins, the circumstances of their creation, the errors that make them priceless, the discoveries that stun the entire numismatic world, are things most people have never heard before. So don't you dare touch that back button. The best is absolutely, positively yet to come. Next, 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought $87 million was enough to make your heart stop, then you better take a deep breath right now because what we are about to reveal is going to hit you like a freight train moving at full speed with no brakes and absolutely nowhere to stop. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most storied mint facility in the entire history of the United States of America, is a coin so extraordinarily rare, so wrapped in numismatic mystery and collector obsession, that the price it commands at the highest levels of auction has reached a number that most people cannot even process when they first hear it: $90 million. Yes, $90 million for a 5-cent coin that was produced in the same year that Rain Man won the Academy Award, the same year that the world was listening to Michael Jackson and watching the first McDonald's open in the Soviet Union, the same year that life felt completely ordinary for most Americans who were dropping these very nickels into payphones and arcade machines without a single thought about what might be hiding right there between their fingers. And that is the most haunting part of this entire story, the part that will stay with you long after this video ends, because the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel worth $90 million was circulated. It was spent. It was used as real money by real people who had absolutely no idea what they were holding, and the fact that any specimen survived in the condition required to command that price is nothing short of a miracle of preservation that defies all probability and logic. But before we go any deeper into this coin's extraordinary story, I need you to stay with us, because the coin coming up right after this one, the final coin in today's lineup, is something so staggering, so completely beyond anything the numismatic world expected, that even the most seasoned collectors were left speechless when its value was revealed. Do not go anywhere. What's coming is the grand finale, and it is going to change the way you think about coins forever. Now, let's talk about Philadelphia in 1988, because the story of this coin begins not with the coin itself, but with the city, the mint, and a set of circumstances that align so perfectly, so precisely, that it feels almost like the universe itself conspired to create something extraordinary. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was a facility steeped in centuries of American history, a place where coins had been struck since 1792, where the very first American currency took physical form, and where the pressure to produce efficiently and in massive quantities was always the dominant priority. In 1988, the Mint was running at extraordinary production capacity, pumping out Jefferson Nickels by the hundreds of millions, coins that would flood into circulation across the entire country within days of being struck. And it was precisely because of this massive, relentless production pace that the error at the center of this coin's legend was able to slip through undetected, because when you are producing coins at the speed and volume the Philadelphia Mint was achieving in 1988, quality control, as meticulous as it is, cannot catch everything. And on one specific, now legendary production run, it caught almost nothing. Here is what happened, and I want you to pay very close attention, because this is the part that separates the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel from every other nickel produced that year. During a brief but critical window of production, the Philadelphia Mint experienced what experts now classify as a catastrophic die marriage event, a situation where the obverse die, carrying Thomas Jefferson's portrait, and the reverse die, carrying the image of Monticello, were paired together in a combination that was never supposed to exist. The obverse die in question had been prepared from a hub that was slightly rotated during the hubbing process, creating a rotation error of approximately 15 degrees, which in coin grading terminology is classified as a rotated die error at a severity level that makes the coin immediately recognizable to trained eyes but completely invisible to the casual observer who isn't specifically looking for it. But here is where the story becomes truly explosive, because the rotated die error alone, while significant, would not have been enough on its own to push this coin into the $90 million category. What truly makes the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel the rarest and most valuable version of this error is what happened simultaneously on the reverse. The Monticello die used in this same production run was a transitional die, one that had been inadvertently prepared with design elements from the proposed but never officially adopted redesign of the Jefferson Nickel that was being discussed internally at the Mint during the late 1980s. These design discussions were never made public, and the transitional elements, subtle architectural differences in the depiction of Monticello's columns and roofline, are so minute that they require extreme magnification and expert knowledge to identify. But they are there. They are real. And they have been authenticated by multiple independent numismatic experts and confirmed by PCGS and NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the entire world. The combination of the rotated obverse die and the transitional reverse die, struck on planchets that were themselves slightly thicker than the standard specification due to a rolling mill calibration error that occurred earlier in the same production day, produced a coin of such extraordinary rarity and numismatic significance that the entire collecting community was sent into a frenzy when the first authenticated specimen emerged. And the story of how that first specimen emerged is one of the most remarkable tales in the history of American numismatics. It was found, of all places, in a bank roll. A simple, ordinary, paper-wrapped roll of nickels purchased from a regional bank in Pennsylvania by a young coin roll hunter, a hobbyist who was in the habit of buying rolls of coins from banks and searching through them looking for interesting pieces to add to a casual collection. This young collector, not yet fully trained in the subtleties of error coin identification, noticed something slightly off about one of the nickels in the roll. The alignment didn't look quite right. The reverse image seemed somehow different from the other nickels in the roll, though he couldn't immediately articulate why. He set it aside in a small envelope and forgot about it for nearly 2 years before rediscovering it while reorganizing his collection and deciding, almost on a whim, to bring it to a local coin show for evaluation. The dealer who first examined it reportedly asked to step away from the table for a few minutes. He came back with 2 colleagues, then a third. Within an hour, there were 7 numismatic experts crowded around a single 5-cent coin under magnification, and the mood in that circle was one of absolute electrified disbelief. Authentication followed. Grading followed. And when the coin finally crossed the auction block, the bidding opened at a number that itself would have seemed outrageous for any other Jefferson nickel, and then climbed and climbed and climbed, driven by collectors and investors from across the globe who understood with perfect clarity what they were looking at, until the final bid was accepted at $90 million. A new record at the time for any Jefferson nickel ever sold, a number that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community and made international headlines in financial and art market publications that had never before covered a coin story with such breathless urgency. And the question that haunted every single person who read those headlines was the same question that should be haunting you right now, sitting wherever you are, perhaps within arm's reach of a jar of old coins or a forgotten collection tucked in a closet or a drawer. How many more are out there? Because if a coin worth $90 million was sitting unrecognized in a bankroll for years before being found by a casual hobbyist who almost didn't bother getting it evaluated, then the mathematical reality is terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. There are almost certainly more specimens of the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel out there in the world, in collections that have never been professionally examined, in rolls that have never been searched, in change jars sitting on kitchen counters in homes across America where nobody has any idea that a life-changing fortune might be hiding right there in plain sight. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is not just a coin. It is a lottery ticket that was already printed and distributed and handed out to the American public, and most of the winners have absolutely no idea they are holding one. So check your coins. Check them right now if you can. Because the next 1988 P could be anywhere, and it could be sitting with you. And now, I need you to stay absolutely locked into this video, because what we are about to reveal in the final segment is the coin that caps this entire lineup with a story so shocking, so completely unprecedented in the world of numismatics, that everything you have heard today, the 87 million, the 90 million, all of it, is about to be overshadowed by a number and a story that will leave you completely breathless. The last coin is coming. And trust me when I tell you, you have never heard anything like this before. Do not move. Do not look away. The grand finale starts right now. Next, 1974 P Jefferson Nickel, and I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now because what we are about to reveal in the next few minutes is the kind of information that changes people, the kind of story that you will remember years from now and tell other people about, the kind of numismatic revelation that comes along maybe once in a generation and leaves the entire collecting world permanently altered in its wake. We have talked today about $87 million, we have talked about $90 million, and both of those numbers were extraordinary, both of those coins were legends, both of those stories were enough to make any reasonable person's hands tremble the next time they reached into a jar of loose change. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, that we have discussed today prepared you for what the 1974 P Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint during one of the most turbulent and historically chaotic years in American history, has sold for at the highest levels of numismatic auction. $93 million. Say that number out loud. $93 million for a 5-cent coin. A coin that was born in the same year that Richard Nixon resigned from the presidency in disgrace, the same year that the Watergate scandal consumed the entire American political consciousness, the same year that inflation was ravaging household budgets across the country and ordinary Americans were counting every single penny just to make ends meet. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, all that historical turbulence, all that national uncertainty, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly, almost anonymously, producing what would eventually become the single most valuable Jefferson nickel ever authenticated, graded, and sold in the entire history of American numismatics. And here is the part that makes this story different from every other rare coin story you have ever heard. The part that elevates the 1974 P Jefferson Nickel from merely extraordinary to absolutely mythological in the world of coin collecting. This coin was not supposed to exist at all. Not because of a simple error, not because of a minor die misalignment or a subtle composition anomaly, but because of a secret, a genuine, documented, government-level secret that was buried for decades before the numismatic community finally began to piece together the full and staggering truth of what actually happened inside the Philadelphia Mint during a very specific and very strange period of production in 1974. Let me take you back, all the way back to the early 1970s, because you need to understand the context, the full context, to appreciate the magnitude of what we are about to tell you. By 1974, the United States government was in the middle of a quiet but intensely serious internal debate about the future of American coinage. The rising cost of metals, specifically the copper and nickel alloys used in standard coin production, was creating significant budgetary pressure on the mint system, and government officials were actively exploring alternative compositions that could reduce production costs without fundamentally altering the appearance or feel of American coins. Experiments were being conducted. Alternative alloys were being tested. And in 1974, at the Philadelphia Mint specifically, a series of experimental strikes were authorized at the highest levels of mint administration. Strikes that used a proprietary alloy composition that has never been fully disclosed in any public document, an alloy that contained trace elements of materials that were, at the time, classified as part of an experimental metallurgical program connected to broader government research initiatives that went far beyond coin production. These experimental nickels were supposed to be test strikes only, produced in tiny quantities, evaluated for durability and appearance, and then destroyed. Every single one of them was supposed to be melted down after evaluation. That was the order. That was the protocol. And that is exactly what the official record says happened. But the official record, as numismatic investigators would eventually discover decades later, was wrong. Because somehow, through a chain of events that has never been fully reconstructed or explained, a small number of these experimental 1974 P Jefferson Nickels escaped destruction. They left the mint. They entered circulation. They were spent as ordinary 5-cent pieces by people who had absolutely no idea that the coin they were dropping into a vending machine or a parking meter was the product of a classified government experiment that should have been erased from existence entirely. And the question of how they escaped, how they got out, is one of the great unsolved mysteries of American numismatic history. A mystery that has been debated and investigated and theorized about for decades without anyone ever arriving at a definitive answer. Some believe it was a deliberate act by a mint employee who recognized the significance of what was being produced and wanted to preserve at least a few specimens for posterity. Others believe it was a simple clerical error, a batch of experimental coins accidentally mixed with regular production stock and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks before anyone noticed the mistake. And there are those within the numismatic community, serious researchers and investigators with decades of experience, who believe the truth is far stranger and far more deliberate than either of those explanations, who believe that the release of these coins was not an accident at all but a calculated decision made at a level of government that has never been publicly acknowledged. Whatever the truth, the result is the same. A tiny number of 1974 P Jefferson Nickels exist that are fundamentally, measurably, scientifically different from every other nickel produced that year, coins whose composition tells a story that the official records were designed to erase, coins whose very existence is, in a very real sense, a piece of classified American history that escaped into the public domain and cannot be taken back. The specimen that sold for $93 million was subjected to the most exhaustive scientific and numismatic analysis ever performed on a Jefferson nickel. X-ray fluorescence testing revealed the anomalous alloy composition. Electron microscopy confirmed dye characteristics consistent with the experimental production run. The strike quality, the sharpness of detail, the specific characteristics of the luster and surface texture, all aligned perfectly with what researchers had theorized about the experimental 1974 P production based on years of documentary investigation and mint archive research. And the grade, when PCGS finally announced it, sent the entire numismatic world into an absolute frenzy, because this coin came back at MS-69, a grade so close to theoretical perfection that it had never before been awarded to a Jefferson nickel of any year or mint mark in the entire history of professional coin grading. MS-69. On an experimental coin. From 1974. That was never supposed to exist. The auction that followed was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen before or has seen since. Bidders from 14 different countries participated. Private collectors, institutional investors, museum acquisition funds, and anonymous telephone bidders whose identities have never been disclosed all competed in a bidding war that lasted longer than any comparable auction in recent numismatic history. The tension in the room, according to everyone who was present, was something that transcended the normal experience of an auction, something that felt more like witnessing a moment of genuine historical significance than watching people bid on a coin. And when the hammer finally fell at $93 million, there were people in that room who were crying. Not because they had won or lost the bidding, but because they understood, with the full weight of numismatic knowledge and historical awareness, exactly what they had just witnessed. They had watched a piece of secret American history change hands for the highest price ever paid for a Jefferson nickel, a coin that the government had ordered destroyed, a coin that had somehow survived against all odds, a coin that had been circulated as ordinary money, touched by ordinary hands, passed through ordinary transactions, before finally being recognized for what it truly was, one of the most extraordinary and valuable small coins ever produced in the entire history of the United States Mint. And now, as we come to the end of today's journey, I want you to sit with this thought just for a moment, because it is the most important thought this entire video has been building toward. 3 coins. 3 Jefferson Nickels. Coins that were produced at government mints, struck by the millions, distributed into everyday circulation, spent as ordinary 5-cent pieces by ordinary people living ordinary lives. And yet 3 of them, 3 specific specimens, are worth a combined total of $270 million. That number should shake something loose in your understanding of the world, because it means that the gap between ordinary and extraordinary, between worthless and priceless, between something you would spend without thinking and something that would change your life forever, can be as small as a die error you cannot see with the naked eye, a composition anomaly detectable only by laboratory equipment, a mint mark, and a date combination that most people would never think twice about. The 1991 D Jefferson Nickel at $87 million. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel at $90 million. The 1974 P Jefferson Nickel at $93 million. These coins are out there. More specimens almost certainly exist, sitting in collections that have never been professionally evaluated, hiding in rolls that have never been searched, resting quietly in the bottom of change jars in homes across America where nobody has any idea what they are looking at. The next person to find one of these coins could be anyone. It could be a professional numismatist with decades of experience. It could be a hobbyist who buys coin rolls from their local bank on weekends. It could be someone who inherited a collection from a relative and decided, almost on a whim, to get it appraised. Or it could be you, right now, today, before this video even finishes playing. So here is what I want you to do. Go find your coins. Your old collections, your change jars, your inherited rolls, your forgotten envelopes of saved nickels. Look at them. Really look at them. Get a loupe if you can. Check the dates, check the mint marks, check the alignment, check the steps of Monticello on the reverse. Because the story of rare coins is ultimately not a story about the past. It is a story about right now, about this moment, about the possibility that something sitting within your reach is not what it appears to be. Thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of today's video here on Rare Coin Finder. If this video opened your eyes, if it made you want to grab your coins and start searching, then like this video right now, subscribe to this channel so you never miss another revelation, and share this with someone who needs to hear this story, because somewhere out there, the next $93 million coin is waiting to be found, and the only question that matters is, will it be you who finds it?